Hey guys, how you doing? Hope you having good day. Before getting into video, I wanna thank you all for 500 subscriber. Mean a lot. In this video, I am gonna talk about what if DEKU was the successor of Evil Superman. Part 1. And subscribe for more, also like this video, that will be super duper awesome, helps me to stay motivated. And thanks to the author of this story, this video is possible. So do check it out and show some love. Name of this fanfic is Arach Big Blue Boy Scattlestat 700. So do check out the author of this story and check out entire work. Also if you have any complaints about videos, feel free to comment, I will try to improve them. Let's jump in video. Namuri Kayama, aka the pro-heroine Midnight, was perceived to be many things. A woman of loose morals, a crazed sex fiend, a danger to the moral standards of society, the reason for the national referendum limiting the amount of skin a hero costume could show. Well, the last part was very true. She was a woman who knew what she enjoyed. She enjoyed being away from it all, and here she was in Fukushima, enjoying the nice mountain air. It had been a rough year and a half, to say the least. She found herself in need of a reset after discovering that children would never be in her future. It had been a devastating blow, as it was something she wanted for the future, and it was something her fiancé had wanted for the future as well. Her life had been on the verge of a dream state. She was a UA graduate who had shaken up the status quo. The topping on the cake was that she had found the love of her life. He wasn't a pro-hero, and they had met at an art show, his art show, to be exact. It had been a whirlwind of romance, love, and fun. It had been everything she ever dreamed of. Adam Keyes was known for his impulsive nature, which was a facet of him, but she found the other side that wanted peace, stability, and, most of all, her. Not the pro-hero Midnight, but Namuri. When they lie in bed and talk of the future, it comes down to family. When she had received the news, she feared that it would all come crumbling down. She was so scared to tell him, her eyes were shut tight, expecting everything to end. When his arm slipped around her shoulders, his whispers of it would be all right, that they would figure it out together was all she needed. He had left to go on a tour of America, but he never made it, his plane had gone down over the Atlantic with all hands lost. When she heard the news, it just left her on the floor in a heap, all she could do was look at her engagement ring and cry. Her dear friends Hisashi and Shota were there for her, doing their best to care for her in her hour of need. They stood by her side as she planned the funeral, as Adam had no family. It was when his attorney told her that everything was now hers that she was in shock. Adam had made a will naming her as his sole beneficiary the day after she had agreed to marry him. He had never doubted their love for each other. All the money in the world didn't matter without someone to share it with, and the one she wanted to share it with was gone. She decided to take some time off. She knew it would hurt her rankings, but she didn't care, she needed to regroup, to recenter herself. She finished her Ph.D. in psychology, majored in art history, and found peace hiking in the mountains. That was how she was in the little town of Fukushima, a few hours away from Tokyo, looking for the next step in her life. She sat atop a hill, setting her pack down, and waited as the stars filled the sky. A friend of hers had told her that one of the largest meteor showers was supposed to be here, and one thing Adam loved was a good meteor shower. He had proposed to her on this same hilltop during one. She could still feel the loss as she sat there, she let herself grieve and miss him. She laid back, her head resting on her pack, and waited. It was spectacular after it began, she talked to him as if he was beside her mind imagining his voice and response. Suddenly, there was a huge roar as something passed right over her, a ball of fire filled the night sky as it crashed into the valley below. A thunderous explosion nearly knocked Namuri off her feet, she grabbed her pack and began to make her way down the mountain, she feared it was some aircraft that had crashed. While her quirk would not help her, she was still a pro-hero, and they ran into danger, not away from it. As they approached the site, Namuri surveyed the destruction caused by the meteor. The trees had been completely sheared off, and their tops were scorched. She realized that there was surprisingly little fire, considering the impact. The broken treetops didn't look like they had been cut off deliberately. The possibility of an aircraft crash is becoming more likely. She pulled out her phone, ready to radio it in as she moved closer. She approached the impact site carefully but moved quickly, hoping she was wrong. She came through the tree line and froze. There, embedded into the mountain's base, was some strange metal craft. Namuri had never seen anything like it, there were no torn pieces or debris. There was nothing on this planet that could have fallen from the sky and survived such an impact intact. That last thought made her panic, then, there was a brilliant blue flash. Namuri managed to shield her eyes. When she opened them, she saw a woman floating before the vessel. She had long, curly black hair and deep, sorrowful eyes. She wore a tight white suit that made her look like a superhero, complete with red boots and a red cape around her shoulders. A blue stripe ran from her legs up the sides of her torso and down her arms. Her chest bore a stylized S inside a blue triangle. Namuri stared at the woman, who appeared to be human. It was feasible that they were a hero from a different country, but Nomuri didn't recognize them. Despite the person's stunning appearance and composure, Nomuri had never seen them. Their beauty could have easily landed them on lists of the most attractive people, but Nomuri remained unsure of their identity. Nomuri hesitated as the woman's gaze fell upon her and the woman floated down towards her. Nomuri's hero instincts kicked in and she took a defensive posture. When the woman's foot touched the ground, her image shimmered. It was revealed that this person was not there but some projection. Nomuri was shocked. If this was some technology, it was far more advanced than anything she had ever seen or heard of. It made her think that maybe this had something to do with Island. Perhaps some rogue experiment has gone wrong. The unknown woman began to speak in a strange language, gesturing towards the ship. It had a pleading tone to it, like there was something very important. There is something with the ship. Nomuri softened her stance. Is there something inside the ship? The woman seemed just as confused by Nomuri's words. The woman closed her eyes and a blinding pulse of light began to build inside the woman's core. The light erupted as Nomuri's gas flooded the area. Field of white. Everything around Nomuri was blinding. Slowly, her vision returned and she stood on a balcony looking at an alien world. As she looked out over the landscape, the first thing that caught her attention was the red sun. It bathed the jagged landscape in a strange hue. She looked at the spires surrounding her. They twisted and rose at odd angles that were just impossible. The sound of footsteps pulled her attention back. She turned and saw the woman walking towards her again. Nomuri reached for her quirk. It was there, but she couldn't find anything to pull. The woman paused as she looked at Nomuri. Nomuri Kayama, her voice rang out. It was hollow, almost like it was being run through a filter. Nomuri stopped as the woman shook her head. Nomuri Kayama. This time, it sounded clearer and more natural. Who are you? Where are we? Nomuri said, still cautious. I am Laurel Orvan of the House of El. This was Krypton. She said, gesturing to the world behind Nomuri. This was my home. Was? The landscape around her memorized Nomuri. We were an advanced civilization, but we grew beyond our means of supporting ourselves. Like fools, we began to mine the planet, it only postponed our demise. Lara looked at Nomuri. My husband Jor-El tried to warn them, he tried desperately to tell them that their course of action would lead to a planetary collapse, but they wouldn't listen. What happened? Nomuri asked. The core of the planet collapsed, Lara said. Nomuri heard a massive crash as towers began to fall to the ground. There was nothing we could do, our civilization was doomed. As she led Nomuri into the building, Nomuri heard a baby's cry. The only thing we could do was what any parent would do. We had to save our son. Nomuri saw the woman known as Lara enter from another door. As the building shook, she carried a bundle in her arms as a man stepped out from behind some machines. He was handsome, with brown hair peppered with gray and an eye patch covering one eye, his other shone a brilliant green. Nomuri noticed that he had the same stylized S on his chest. Nomuri watched as the other Lara pulled back the blanket to reveal a baby. She watched as the woman shed tears and kissed her child goodbye before handing him to her husband. She watched the man repeat the process. The room's floor opened and out rose a vessel, just like the one that fell to Earth. She saw them place the child into the ship. We had to do what we could to save our son, Lara said to Nomuri as he watched the ship rise into the sky and blast free of the planet. Once again, everything faded away and now Nomuri and Lara were above the planet. Nomuri saw the ship come roaring past them, then the most horrendous sound that would come to haunt Nomuri's dream. Nomuri turned and saw the planet implode. Nomuri Kayama, my child, is the last survivor of our world. He is alone, he needs to be protected, shepherded into adulthood. Lara's eyes pleaded with Nomuri. Please, Nomuri Kayama, will you take him as your own? Your son is still on the ship. Nomuri could feel the emotion in Lara's voice. What is his name? Hal-El, please, Nomuri, please save him, Lara pleaded with the heroine. Nomuri could hear Adam screaming yes, an alien life form, a child in need, she could hear him screaming yes. What does that symbol mean? I see on your clothes, and his father also had it. It is the symbol of our house, it means hope, Lara responded, touching it. Hope, she whispered, she looked into Lara's eyes, they were filled with pleading and hope. Yes, Nomuri said, she could feel Adam's arms around her as everything faded. Nomuri blinked and she stood in front of the craft. The craft began to shift and move as it seemed to be coming to life, out of the side, a pod slid out. Nomuri cautiously approached. She could see it looked just like the one from her vision, but a child having survived the unknown rigors of space travel, a crash landing, and the gods only knew what else. Nomuri saw the protective shielding open with a hiss. As she was about to peer over the edge, she heard the soft whimper of a baby. She moved closer and looked inside the cradle, and there he was, Kal-El. As soon as he saw her, his little arms extended towards her as his soft whimpers melted her heart. He appeared maybe 4 to 6 months old, and his brilliant green eyes bore straight into her soul. He was wrapped in these blankets of blue and red. Namuri picked him up gently, his whimpering slowing as she held him close. The sudden rumble of the mountain brought her back to reality as the mountain began to shift. She saw the blankets that had kept him. She grabbed it and retreated as the dirt and rock cascaded down, burying the ship. Cal started to cry from the sudden noise. Namuri remarked how he had a healthy set of lungs. Namuri looked around. The night sky was still twinkling overhead, and in her arms was a child. "What should I name you?" Namuri mused as she calmed the child, who settled down quickly and seemed interested in the sky overhead. When she spoke, her voice drew his attention. He stared at her with awe and wonder, his eyes wide. "Well, how about Clark?" That was Adam's father's name. She couldn't help but giggle as he seemed to shake his head and began to babble at her. "Oh really?" Namuri smiled at the child. "You don't say. Well, how about Izuku? That was my grandfather's name, which was very special to me." She took the child's happy babble as approval. "Now, my little Izuku, we must bring you to life. I could say that I gave birth to you at home. It has been about 15 months since since he has been gone. Only a few people know about my inability to have children, but Hisashi and Shoto will back me up. I need a doctor we can trust and who may be willing to lie for me. Thankfully, I know just the one." Namuri, with the child in her arms, began her trek back to civilization, the babble of her new son to keep her company till he fell asleep in her arms. Civilization. Namuri at first thought about leaving and heading home, but she remembered some very important things. 1. She had no car seat or other provisions for a child whatsoever. 2. There was nothing open for her to buy anything in the sleepy little mountain town. The only thing that worked in her favor was that she had rented a home for the night, so she didn't have to answer any difficult questions. Izuku had slept most of the way home, but he soon began to fuss. It took Namuri a little bit to realize that he was hungry, which led to a very improvised process of warming up some milk and figuring out some delivery system. Once he was satisfied, he went back to sleep. Namuri lay beside him, gently stroking his hair, and soon sleep claimed her. Thankfully, Izuku slept through his first night in his new world. Unthankfully, his bowels seemed to work as Namuri awoke him, soiling himself. Once again, a quick bath and improvised diaper later, they were back on track. It was going to be a few moments as they went through the improvised feeding again. She bundled Izuku up, she dressed to hide her identity, and off they went into the morning. She just watched in wonder as his little face crunched at the morning light, blinking before his eyes adjusted, and he was looking around at everything with that wonder and awe. He would always turn to Namuri's voice and seemed to like it as he would babble some noises back to her. Her first stop after a quick internet search was the nearest general goods store. It was a bit of a walk but perfect for mother and son bonding. That thought made her a little emotional, something that she had thought would never be, then maybe someday through adoption, but then that seemed to go off into oblivion as well. Now, here she was, a single mother with an alien being. "I don't even know what he can eat. Or what I can feed him. I gave him warm milk because well I am going to have to be careful and journal everything." A stop at an ATM later, they were on their way once again. She had to wait a little for the shop to open, and when it did, an older lady greeted her with a smile. Namuri spun a simple story of a relative dropping the child off and disappearing before the morning light. The woman sympathized with Namuri's plight and helped put together the necessities for the child. Namuri's eyes widened slightly at the total cost, more from not truly realizing how much it was needed for a child. A stop later at the local market for formula and baby food, Namuri was on her way home with Izuku now snuggled into the stroller. "Now, we need to make you legal." Chiyo. Cryptic phone calls are not Chiyo's favorite thing. The only thing saving this person from her wrath was that it was Namuri Kayama who had gone silent after the death of her fiancé. Chiyo remembered the girl fondly from when she was a student at UA, though her penchant for trouble and lack of clothing had left a lasting impression. But it was her impassioned plea that she needed help and someone she could trust that got Chiyo moving. The drive was nice, even scenic. When she came into the small town, she could already feel herself relaxing in the small town life. She smiled, enjoying the change of pace, even if it would be brief. She pulled up to the house, seeing Namuri's car in the driveway. A knock at the door soon opened, telling Chiyo that something was up immediately. Namuri was carrying a small child, maybe 4 to 5 months old. The child had black hair and was completely fascinated with Namuri, who seemed just as enchanted. "Babysitting?" Chiyo said that as she approached. Namuri had asked Chiyo to bring her medical bag, so Chiyo wondered if the patient was maybe the child's mother. Chiyo knew that Namuri couldn't have been pregnant. "Kind of," Namuri said, sounding slightly evasive to Chiyo. "Where is the patient you wanted me to look at?" Chiyo said, listening to the silence of the house. "It's the baby," Namuri said. "Where are the baby's parents?" Chiyo approached the child in Namuri's arms. "They are no longer with us," Namuri said quietly. "The mother asked me to take care of him." Gio could sense that there was more to this than what was being told. She stared at Namuri and saw the young woman squirm. "Let me begin the wellness check and you can work up the courage to tell me what you are withholding." When Chio approached the baby, the infant looked at her with brilliant green eyes. They looked at her in wonder. The child was dressed and wrapped in a red blanket. Chio noticed that the fabric felt cool, but the child didn't feel cold. The material had a shimmer to the fabric and felt as soft as anything she could think of. "What is his name?" "Heizuku," Namuri faltered under the woman's gaze. "Namuri," Chio said softly as she looked down at the boy and made faces to make the baby smile, which worked like a charm. "How about you tell me the truth of what is going on here?" "The baby's name is Kal-El, his parents are dead, he is the last of his kind." Namuri saw Chio stop momentarily. "He is from outer space." Chio froze. "For the sake of argument, let me say that I believe you. Do you have any proof, and how do you know that the child is not carrying some infection or a bacteria that could harm all life on our planet?" He came down in a ship that crashed into the mountainside. There was a holographic messenger AI of some sort. The projection of his mother, who told me what happened to their home planet, was that they could save him by sending him here. Namuri was getting a little nervous from the look that Chio was giving her. She seemed to know what planet they were sending him to, and if they could send a baby through space, why would they send him somewhere where he would kill everyone, leaving no one to take care of him? "This child, how are you going to explain it?" Chio asked. "I will say that he is Adams and my child." Namuri looked at her pleadingly. "You, Hisashi and Shota are the only ones who know I can't have children. I can say that I did a home birth and that you were my doctor." Chio narrowed her gaze. "You want me to say that I helped you give birth to him so you can get him legal documents?" Namuri nodded and Izuku babbled. "Namuri, I don't know about that." "Please, Chio." Namuri kneeled. "It is a little crazy, but his mother asked me to care for him. Adam and I wanted to adopt before he died. I come here to see a meteor shower on the same hilltop he proposed and now a child lands in my lap." Chio sighed, the whole thing sounded like one big twist of fate. She had never seen Namuri so happy as the day she told the woman she was engaged. During that time, she had seen Namuri bask in the glow of it all, and then she had to witness it all crumble down. She looked at the child, she swore she could see a pleading in the boy's green eyes. "We need to take him to UA," Chio said. "We can bring him in the underground entrance so I can run all the tests we need for his safety and ours. We must discover everything we can, his immune system is unprepared for our environment, so we must inoculate him." Chio placed her hand on Namuri's head. They locked eyes, and the older woman smiled softly. "I will do everything possible to help you and him, but we should tell Nezu. He will be the best one to help us navigate things in the future." Namuri thought about it and nodded in agreement, trusting Chio's judgment. One of a kind. Nezu was skeptical as anyone would be, but he was thrilled at the possible meaning of it all, and that he would be part of First Contact. The mouse, bear, dog, and creature was himself one of a kind. Rare in the fact that he was an animal with a quirk, rare for having survived the vicious and grotesque experimentation that had been done on him. The thought of subjecting another to such a thing churned his stomach and damaged his soul. The child appeared human at the very least, which would allow him to blend in. There was the fact that the child would not have a quirk, the quirkless in this day were a rare breed. It would be hard on the boy, but they could teach him to use his mind and make that his weapon. Of course, there were all kinds of questions that needed to be answered. It was possible that the child's alien physiology would give him a unique advantage. It was very exciting. Izuku did not like whatever was happening, something kept hurting him, and he didn't like it. He would cry, wanting it to go away, and then the person would hold him, and sounds would come to him. He liked their sounds and the way they smelled. He missed the other smells, he wanted the different smells not knowing how to communicate that, he began to cry. Namuri was surprised by the sudden outburst and immediately began to try to soothe him. Unlike other times, it took a while, but eventually, he fell asleep, signaling an end to the day. Nezu watched as, over the next several weeks, Chio and he ran several different tests. Once they were both sure that it wouldn't harm the child, well as sure as they could be, they began administering vaccines. Namuri was pleased that her son could pass as human, that there was no obvious giveaway that would out him as anything other. His heart was slightly larger than normal humans, but it seemed in proportion to the rest of his body. However, it was something they would have to monitor just in case. His DNA was being sequenced, and everything else would have to be monitored and recorded over time. She did get a good chuckle over watching Nezu and Chio arguing over private tutoring and schooling like two grandparents. Between the two of them, all the appropriate records were backdated, all the necessary paperwork was filed, and Izuku Kayama was officially registered as a citizen of Japan. Uncles. Shota and Hisashi were in shock, to say the least. The news that Namuri had laid upon them had stunned them into silence, almost as much as when she called them over and the child was in her arms. She was surprised when Hisashi spoke against him as he began to go into various alien experiences, how the baby was going to take over the world and enslave them all. Shota just looked down at the child, he leaned close and whispered, "Welcome to Earth, problem child." Izuku looked up at the scruffy man and Nomuri swore here Asbury's the man. Izuku babbled back and immediately grabbed onto the black hair around him and, like any good child, tried to shove it in his mouth. "See, he is already trying to eat us," Mick exclaimed. The sudden increase in volume made Izuku freeze and begin to cry. Nomuri and Shota glared at him and Nomuri took her son into her arms, whispering soothing words. Hisashi sighed in defeat when he came towards Izuku, the boy started crying again, earning a smile from Shota, it seems he had good taste. Hisashi's shoulders slumped. "Fine, but when he grows tentacles and takes over your minds, remember who warned you first." "He would never," Nomuri said, snuggling Izuku tight. "Besides, he is too cute." She smiled as her son babbled back at her. -4 years old. Izuku Kayama, son of the pro-hero Midnight, was not having a good day. He was trying to understand why he wouldn't get a quirk, everyone has one, so why wouldn't he? Mom had a quirk, his dad had a quirk, and his uncles had quirks, but they seemed so set that he wouldn't. Grandma had sat him down and told him something about quirk factor, and he didn't have any. He was sitting quietly in the chair, he wanted to be a hero, he wanted to one day fight by his family's side in making the world a better place. Now, he could never do that. "Why are you so sad?" his grandpa Nezu asked. "I don't have a quirk," he pouted. "I can't be a hero." "Who said?" his grandpa responded. Izuku wanted to respond, but he couldn't, no one had told him he couldn't, Mom had just said he wouldn't get a quirk, Uncle Sleepy had just shrugged, and Uncle Noise had told him never to give up. No one. He said more to himself than anyone else. "And what is it I always tell you?" his grandpa said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Always let Mama take the first bite." Nezu chuckled, "Yes, that is true, but what is the other thing?" "There is no better weapon than my mind," he said, smiling. "If I don't have a quirk, I must train my mind and body. When I am done, your mind will be the most dangerous thing on the planet and your uncles can help with your body and teach you how to fight." Nezu smiled as the boy's demeanor improved. "There is nothing you can't do if you put your heart and mind to it, my boy." "Thank you, Grandpa," Izuku said, stepping into the warm embrace. "Mama, guess what?" he said, entering the living room. "What, my baby boy?" she said, matching his energy level. "I am going to be a hero," he said, stopping and standing before her with his hand on his hips. "I am going to be a quirkless hero, Grandpa is going to train my mind, and then I will train my body, and then I will learn all I need to know to be your sidekick." "I could use a super smart sidekick." She took on an exaggerated look of thinking about it. "But what would be your hero name?" You Midnight. Maybe I can be dawn or sunrise cause I like being outside," he said triumphantly. "Well, you better get to work on your costume then, Mr. Sunrise," she smiled, kneeling and kissing his cheek. "Okay, mommy," he yelled as he ran to the art room. "You know that being a quirkless hero is going to be very hard for him," Chio said, watching her grandson run. "I know," Nomuri said, "but what kind of mother would I be if I didn't help him chase his dreams? He has made mine come true, besides, we all knew he would be quirkless. His life ahead may be hard, but he has all of us to help him along." -6 years old. Midnight was racing through the streets like a mad woman trying to get to Izuku's school. The school had called her as Izuku was having some episodes. The teacher told her that he was holding his head and saying how it was too loud, and when he opened it, he started screaming. He had run and locked himself in the closet. They couldn't get him out. Even his friend Mina couldn't get him out, and that was saying something. Mina could get him to do anything. She had alerted Nezu and Chio, as well as his uncles, who were also on their way. Due to his lineage. Midnight arrived at the school and raced inside. The principal was there to greet her and direct her toward the classroom. Mina was lying on the floor with her hand under the door. "Aizu, your mommy is here," she said as she got up and looked at Midnight. "He held my fingers some, but he kept saying it's too loud." "Thank you, Mina," Midnight smiled at the girl before looking at the teacher. "Can you have everyone wait outside, please?" The teacher nodded and led the class away. "Izuku honey, it's me," she said at the door. "Can you let me in?" "It's too loud, Mom, it's all too loud." She heard him respond. "And I can see bones and stuff. I am scared, Mom." She didn't know how to respond, then just listen to my voice, baby, just concentrate on my voice. All the other voices push them away, push them far away, and listen to me. Please close your eyes and picture our home and the backyard. Think of us sitting out back with watermelon. Nomuri closed her eyes, imagining the same thing. "Can you see it, baby?" I can see it, mommy, but the noise." She could hear the pain in his voice. "No noise, just me and you. Just me and you," she whispered. It went silent for a minute and then the door opened. She stepped back and she saw Izuku, his eyes shut tight, feeling for her. When she touched him, he launched himself forward into her arms. She could hear him whispering, "Just you and me," repeatedly. She held him tight and made her way out of the room. The teacher looked at her and she just shook her head and went down the hall. Izuku opened his eyes for a moment to see Mina looking at him, worried. He gave her a wave and tried to smile before quickly shutting his eyes. She made her way outside and got to the car as quickly as she could. As she did, Shota and Hisashi were running up. She held up her hand to tell them to stay back. "I will put you in the car, baby, your uncles are here." She felt him nod and could still hear him muttering the mantra. She closed the door as gently as possible, noticing that he winced. She ran towards her friends. "Shota, do you have your headphones with you?" He nodded, confused. "Give them to me." She took them from his outstretched hands and ran back to the car. Gently, she placed them on and activated the noise cancellation function. She could see Izuku's shoulders relax. "I will be right back," she whispered, surprisingly seeing him nodding. When she returned, they looked at her, puzzled. She pulled out her phone and called Chio, telling her that she had Izuku and they would be on the way soon. "Something happened," she said. "He is saying that everything is too loud and that he sees bones." "It can be a quirk," Hisashi said a little too loud. Nomuri hushed him. "He heard me when I whispered with the noise cancelling on," she whispered. "It sounds like some sort of super senses, it could be a function of his race," Shota said quietly. "We should get him to Recovery Girl as quickly as possible. I will give her a heads up." Hisashi was going to say something about an alien takeover, but he could see that it would go badly, too. Izuku had been the sweetest boy all these years, there was no way he would do something like that. "Go, we will be right behind you," he said. Nomuri nodded and headed back to the car. Off they raced towards UA. Chio got everything ready to receive her grandson. She set up a sound dampener, hoping that might ease his suffering. When they came in, she had never seen him so scared before and it broke her heart. When they got him into the area with the sound dampener, she saw him relax more, though his eyes were still shut tight. It took several hours for them to get his hearing manageable and then they started working with his vision. It took some tests and maybe a promise of katsudon and cookies to get him to open his eyes. He said they looked normal, but then he started panicking as he told them there was no skin and then their muscles were disappearing. Nomuri took his hand, allowing him to feel her skin, which helped to calm him down. It was Chio who thought for a moment before coming back with a lead apron and asking him to open his eyes. Her theory proved correct when they figured that he could see through things like an X-ray. She was able to calm him down more and explain what was happening. It continued like this. After they got him some glasses with thin traces of lead, his vision could come under control, then his sense of smell started to act up and before long, they had addressed all 5 of his senses. Once the fear had passed, Izuku immediately proclaimed that he did have a quirk, super senses. He was so excited he didn't notice the look his family gave each other. Izuku was in an isolation room as his family gathered around. "Is he going to be okay?" Nomuri asked, looking at him playing in the room. "Yes, as far as I can tell, where there are quirks that enhance a single sense, he appears to have all 5. X-ray vision, there has been a case before, we need to train him how to use it, so when he gets older, he doesn't get accused of being a peeping Tom." Chio leaned back in her chair. "We don't know what other things may develop due to his origin." "You should tell him," Shota said. Nomuri looked at him surprised and began to shake her head. "Nomuri, strange things are happening. This is not the result of a quirk, this is the result of his DNA, a mutation, and he needs to know if it isn't the only thing that changes about him." "What happens when he hits puberty?" Hisashi chimed in. "Look, I know he is a good kid. I love him to death, but we don't know what is going to happen to his body. He needs to know." "How do I tell him?" "Hey son, you're an alien I found." Nomuri sat down in a chair. "No," Nezu spoke up. "We all should keep to ourselves and why we did it. We are his family and he wills to be there for him." Izuku was sitting in the isolation room. It wasn't too bad, but he didn't like it. When the door opened and all his family came in, he knew it was something bad. He could hear all their hearts pounding. Nomuri sat down next to him and pulled him into her lap. "You know I love your baby, right?" Izuku nodded, he was getting scared. "I have to tell you something." "Are you going to give me away?" he said, his bottom lip trembling, tears in the corner of his eyes. "Is it because I have a quirk with any factor stuff?" "No baby, I will and would never give you away, but I have something very, very important to tell you." She made sure he had calmed down some. "You know how babies come out of mama's bellies, right?" she asked. Izuku nodded, like Mina's mommy and Mina's baby brother. Nomuri smiled and nodded. "Yes, you didn't come out of my belly, out a different mommy's belly." Nomuri was using her words carefully. "I met your birth mommy and something bad had happened and she wasn't going to be around to take care of you and she asked me if I would take care of you." But you, my mommy, right? I don't want to go with the other mommy. You're my mommy. Izuku started crying, holding on to Namuri. I don't want another mommy. He was pleading with her. Yes, oh my baby boy, yes, I am your mommy, I will always be your mommy, she hugged him tightly against her. I am telling you this because not only did you not come from my belly, but your other mommy loved you so much that she sent you from really far away to keep you safe. How far? He muttered, holding her tight. Shota nodded at her to continue. She sent you from the stars, she whispered. From the stars? He said, his head coming up some. Like the moon. Like the woodcutter story. Even farther than that, Namuri responded. So far away in the stars that we don't even know where. I'm an alien. He exclaimed. Suddenly, he looked directly at his uncle Hisashi, who smiled and nodded at him. Is everyone else an alien? No, sweetie, Namuri smiled. But we love you so much. You see, mommy can't have any babies and you came to make me a mommy. It made me so happy and I love you so much. I love you too, he responded, snuggling back in. Is that why you said I wouldn't get a quirk? Yes, baby. But what happened today? He said. But we don't know, Nezu spoke up this time. We don't know why it happened, but it did happen and we need to be careful of what happens going forward. Nezu knelt in front of Izuku. Can you do that? Can you be careful and not tell anyone about being an alien? It could be very dangerous for you and your mommy. Like the TV shows I watch with uncle. He said innocently. Namuri scowled at Hisashi as he ducked behind Shota. Yes, like the shows you watch with uncle that I am going to talk to him about later, Namuri said. I can do it, I promise. He looked at his mommy. Can I still be your sidekick? Of course, sweetie, you can do anything you want to, she said, squeezing him tight. Let's just hope this is the only strangeness we have to deal with, Shota muttered. -8 years old. I told you to check the tires before we got on the road. Shota yelled. And I told you I did, Hisashi yelled back. Would you two stop fighting and just change the tire? Namuri yelled back. Izuku giggled. Do you need help, Uncle Shota? Yes, come hold the lug nuts for me, he glared at Hisashi as he exited the car. They could hear him pleading his case to Namuri as the car door closed. Izuku could hear them clear as day, of course. So the trick to changing a tire is to ensure the jack is secure and before you lift it, you loosen the lug nuts, Shota explained. Izuku nodded, staring very intently at the whole process. Shota enjoyed explaining things to the boy, he would ask good questions and seemed not to have to be told more than once. The camper was up in the air and his uncle was changing the tire when a loud crack was heard and the camper tilted and fell toward Shota. Shota instinctively tried to grab Izuku and dive out of the way when suddenly the camper stopped. Namuri and Hisashi jumped out of the car and they saw Izuku holding up the camper. They were all looking at each other, he looked rather sheepish, like when she found him sneaking a cookie one night. Hi, Mom. Was all he said. -9 years old. We aren't supposed to climb trees this big, Mina. He protested. But my kite is stuck in the tree. She protested. Come on, Izu, don't be such a baby. If we get caught, we won't be able to go to the beach, he protested. Then we just won't get caught. She smiled and started climbing. You be a lookout. With your super senses, we will be just fine. We are so going to get in trouble. He said. No, we won't. That's what you said when we tried to sneak out to catch the monster in the garden. He retorted. How was I supposed to know that wasn't a monster, just your Uncle Cat? She yelled down to him. I don't know because I told you so. He said sarcastically. Whatever. She giggled. The tree was big, much bigger than any tree she had ever climbed, but she wouldn't chicken out now. She kept climbing. Once she reached the branch of the evil tree that had stolen her kite, she began to shimmy along the tree toward her prize. Almost it was just mere fingertips away when crack, the branch broke. It was in slow motion for both of them, the realization that she was falling and the realization he had that she was falling. Ever since he had gotten his super strength, he could jump high, but it was still hard to control, but he couldn't let Mina fall. He had to catch her, and even if he got in trouble, they would get in trouble anyway. He jumped and caught her in his arms. I got you. Mina was shocked, but then she realized they weren't falling. You got me. But who's got you? Izuku realized they weren't falling. Instead, they were floating there with her in his arms. I can fly. You can fly. Mina looked around. Holy hell, Izuku, you can fly. That's great. How do we get down? He asked. Think about going down, Mina said quietly, but slowly, she added. Izuku did that and they floated down. It then turned into a game of trying to fly. He wasn't very good at first. He still wasn't very good when they were done, but he could do it some. When they returned to his house, he thought of how to tell his mom, but thankfully, Mina did it for him. Auntie Nem. Izu can fly. She yelled, breaking into the house. He can what? she yelled, running into the entryway. "Hi mom," he said. -10 years old. Midnight was in her office, feeling rather tired from the grueling patrol. The only thing she was waiting for was Mina and Izuku. They were coming to her office so they could go to dinner. She heard her assistant yelling as her hero alert went off. "Auntie Nem. Auntie Nem." Mina came bursting into her office. She could hear the panic in Mina's voice. Her uniform was dirty and torn. "Oh my god Mina, are you okay?" Midnight ran out from behind her desk. She looked past expecting to see her son. She hoped to see her son, but he was right there. "Where is Izuku?" "We were walking home and this guy came crashing onto the street out of nowhere. He had all these muscles and he was throwing stuff. He threw a mailbox at me." Mina was breaking down into tears. "And Izuku got in the way." Namuri ran past Mina, yelling at her assistant to see the girl as she hit the streets. She heard the sounds of battle coming from around the corner. She saw the water hose heroes, Daiki and Hana, were down and severely injured. Standing before them was a young boy around 10 in a familiar limited edition All Might hoodie. She was frozen until she saw this monster attack her baby boy and she immediately sprang into action. She saw the monster swing a post at her baby. She screamed for him to move. What she saw was the post wrapped around her baby boy, how braced against the impact. She saw him yank the post away from the villain and return the favor, sending the villain flying. She ran in, tearing part of her suit while the monster was dazed. As his eyes fell closed, she looked at Izuku. "Rooftop, my office," she mouthed to him. "Now." Izuku nodded and took to the air, escaping as more heroes emerged. When she came in, she saw him hugging Mina, who was crying. "Hi, mom," he said quietly. "Mina and Izuku. What are you trying to tell me? That you are from outer space?" Mina sat on Izuku's bed, staring at her best friend. "Shhhhhh," he said, looking around. He knew they were home alone. His mom had sent them home after the craziness of the day and their evening plans had been cancelled. "Mina, I don't have any proof, all I have is what my family told me. I don't have a quirk, this all because of." He shrugged. Izuku was scared. He was telling her something he had been told not to tell anyone, but Mina was his best friend and she liked aliens. Granted, they were the chest bursting, taking over people and stuff. But all things sci-fi were in her wheelhouse. But being confronted with something, especially when your friend had no proof for their outlandish claim, would be hard to accept. "So you being an alien gives you super senses, strength, toughness, speed, and you can fly?" she said slowly. Izuku nodded. She wanted to think he was lying, but Izuku couldn't lie to save his life. It was one of his best qualities. She liked that aspect of him. "What are you, some kind of super alien?" "I don't know," he sat down next to her. "I don't know where I come from or anything. All I know is that my mom told me my birth mother sent me here because their planet was dying. I know telling you this is crazy, but you are my best friend, Mina." Mina reached over and pulled him into a hug. "I believe you, crazy head. Besides, if anyone deserves to have a best friend that's an alien, it's me." She stopped, a teasing smile on her face. "So, do you reproduce by laying eggs?" Izuku began to sputter and couldn't even get a word out. They were just strangled noises as Mina tilted her head back and laughed. "UA." Nezu hung up the call and leaned back in his chair. Izuku had changed yet again. Now, he seemed to have developed invulnerability to go along with all his other abilities. It was easy to see that the boy was becoming a force to be reckoned with. Even a possible danger should this continue to develop. He loved his grandson, a notion that was strange in itself, but the future was something that only the foolish would ignore. He was many things, but ridiculous he was not. They needed answers. The answers could be found in the ship that brought him here. It would be a delicate operation, and he needed to figure out how to do so without attracting too much attention. There were favors he could call in, but this may be more than those favors could cover. First, though, he had to try to locate the craft. There are moments when Izuku would look to the heavens and question how he found himself in his present position. That position was in a suit with his hand on Mina's hip, the other holding her hand. Mina was in a beautiful black dress, with a slit up her leg showing her pink skin brilliantly. Adding to his confusion about the situation, they were in the center of a dance floor with about 200 people watching them. His uncles and grandparents were there, and his mother was recording the whole thing. He knew how he had gotten here. He was having trouble controlling his strength, and his mother and best friend suggested dance. Now, he liked to dance and sing around the house. His mother always did it, so he was naturally roped into it. Mina was that girl who was born to dance. She loved it in ways that Izuku couldn't fathom. All forms of dance, all different styles of dance, and she would sign up for this class. And if he didn't sign up with her, she would have to sign up with Alexander. Izuku and Alexander did not get along. He always made passes at Mina, which bothered Izuku. The thought of them dancing made him sick to his stomach and upset him on a deep emotional level. Alexander had an intelligence-enhancing quirk, this allowed him to be at the top of every class. He lorded over Izuku, but couldn't hold a candle to Izuku's physical capabilities or his sheer magnetism that made people rally around him. When Izuku beat him not once but twice for student council, that was it, they were enemies. It didn't help that Izuku seemed to have the attention of someone that Alexander wanted, and that was Mina. He had tried to dislike her, but her personality had worn him down, and if he could also take her away from Izuku, that just made it better. If Mina was nervous, the only thing that gave it away was the beating of her heart, which he could hear. It was thumping rather loudly, at least to him. He was very familiar with her heartbeat. He would listen to it all the time. His favorite activity was when she would pull his head to her lap and force him to close his eyes, he would do so, focusing on her heartbeat and falling asleep. Their relationship had started to change over the last few years, their dynamic had shifted as the evil monster, puberty, had arrived for them both. With him being an alien, there was a question of how or when it would show up, and show up it did. He was constantly hungry, his powers seemed more robust, and he now had laser heat vision. That had manifested when he got angry about a group of boys harassing Mina outside a movie theater as she was waiting for him to show up. They never saw the movie that day, as in the end, he had to sit with his eyes closed as they waited for his mother. A few weeks of wearing special glasses were required before he could safely control it. He was still coming to grips with his feelings for his best friend, equally terrified and smitten at the same time. She had him wrapped around her finger, as she had for years. Nomuri was thankful that Mina was not cruel or unkind. Mischievous, but that was one of her better qualities as far as Nomuri was concerned, it kept Izuku on his toes and kept him from being too well behaved. He was a good boy, kind and caring, reliable, and she could use many more adjectives. But he was so scared sometimes of messing up that he seemed to stop being a kid. Mina was having none of that and took great delight in roping him into her adventures. Could he say no? In theory, but all she had to do was pout and he was roped in. Mina had no doubts about how she felt for her best friend, he was everything she wanted and hoped for. The best and most faithful friend she could have ever hoped for, and not only that, he was a freaking alien. There had been some doubt about his claims, as, of course, there would be. His grandmother, the freaking recovery girl, showed Mina his DNA sequencing versus an average person. And his lack of quirk factor as well. Mina loved aliens and was in love with her best friend, now only if she knew he felt the same way. He had gone to this camp because of the student council and met some girl from the United States named Lana, and it was all he freaking would talk about for a month. She was so annoyed and angry, and thanks to a long talk with her mother, she came to understand jealous. That hit her like a ton of bricks and made her question how she acted around him, how she dressed, and the fact that he had seen her with bedhead more times than she could count. She had been there when she got her first period and so many other things that immediately became the height of embarrassment to her. Nomuri was keenly aware of how the two felt about each other, she could see it coming for a while now. The baby boy was sprouting up like a weed, he had to work out at UA because of his strength. It was fine by her, Chio and Nezu were there to monitor him. Izuku didn't know this, but his fourth favorite hero would be coming to meet him next week. Izuku was slightly taller than Mina, having begun to hit his growth spurt. He looked down into her beautiful black eyes that made him think of space every time and smiled. His smile warmed her soul and calmed her heart. "Izuku?" she whispered. "Yes, Mina," he replied. "If we win, there is something I want." "Are you going to tell me what that is?" he replied. "Nope," she smiled as she popped the pea, "but it is only something you can do and you have to promise you will, but only if we win. As long as we don't get grounded again, then sure. I promise that I will give you what you want if we win." He adjusted his grip and was more determined than ever to win this for her. He didn't know what she wanted, but knew it would make her happy, which was good enough for him. Now dancing the tango, Mina Ishido and Izuku Kayama, the announcer called out as the first beat of the music hit. Mina was very talented and highly graceful and also a natural performer. Izuku had super reflexes and had trained his butt off, dancing with his mother every night. They won the 13 and under category. That night, they all celebrated at the house, both families had a fantastic night when Mina told him it was time to collect. He called him outside, she had his red blanket around her shoulders, giving him a tremendous hint of part of what she wanted. He just smiled and said, "How high?" "Above the clouds," she said as she placed her feet on his, one arm wrapping around her waist. "Now up and away," she exclaimed as she rose into the air, quickly enough to make her squeal in delight, but not too fast. "You know that is my blanket, right?" he asked. "Yes, but it keeps me so warm when we fly," she whispered. They were coming up on her favorite part as they approached a cloud and she felt it kissing her skin, then they broke through, high above the world, above the clouds, the moon shining brightly. "Is this all you wanted?" he asked. "No, I want you to give me a first kiss," she managed to say. She was scared that she would chicken out and wouldn't have the nerve, but she had done it. I want a real kiss, not a kiss on the cheek. I want you to kiss me, Izuku. Shouldn't that be with someone you like? His heart was pounding, he was optimistic that she could hear it even without super hearing. That is why it has to be you, her voice ringing loud and clear in his ears. I like you, Izuku, more than as my best friend, and I don't want to wait years for us to say something and end up in some weird friend zone. I like you too, Mina. His voice may have been a whisper, but it was loud and clear in her head. She stared at him, the corners of her eyes moist. Then please kiss me, Izuku, be my first kiss and be my first boyfriend. She closed her eyes, tilting her head. That was supposed to be my line, he whispered just inches from her. She felt his breath on her lips, then she felt his lips. Up above the clouds, framed by the moon, wrapped in a blanket made of an alien fabric, Mina Ashido had her first kiss with a boy from the stars. It was with her best friend, and she couldn't have asked for a better moment. They just floated there, these lips pressed together. It wasn't some epic makeout, they were young and inexperienced, but it was everything and anything that either could have wanted. It told the other without a doubt how the other felt. He slowly brought them back down, passing through the clouds and floating back to his yard. They were still kissing the entire time, hovering above the ground, when a cough caused them to break apart. Standing there on the back porch were both their mothers. Mina's mother, Kara, smirked. Say goodnight, Mina, with your words. Good night, Izuku, she whispered as he set her down. She looked at the blanket and then at him. Can I bring it back tomorrow? Sounds good, he replied. Namuri watched the goofy expression between the two as they parted. You were wearing her lipstick, she said, walking back inside, her laughter bursting forth as he went as red as a tomato. Undisclosed location. Nezu stepped out of his car, telling his driver to stay with the vehicle. It wasn't an option, as the armed guards wouldn't let him pass this point. Nezu walked up to the security door and submitted his badge, retinal scan, and paw scan before the doors opened. The next small hallway was the decontamination room, followed by a full body scan. Finally, he was allowed to proceed. The doors slid open, revealing the control center for the whole operation. He watched as the various engineers and scientists were scurrying down below. At the center was the strange triangular vessel of no known planetary origin. It was floating in the room, precisely 6 feet from the ground. The craft was 30 yards on each side and 5 yards tall. Strange lines ran in angular patterns across the vessel, forming a complex grid. The grid had been analyzed, mapped, printed, and expanded, and no function could be derived from it. There was no sort of visible propulsion, no cockpit or anything else. No substance on Earth had even been able to chip part of the craft, and the fact that it had survived a crash landing from outside the atmosphere with not even a scratch had not filled them with much hope that it would be an easy nut to crack. It had taken 2 years for the craft to be located and excavated in secret, then moved to this facility. Nezu had to reach out to a friend across the sea, someone with the money and the desire to aid in this project. That man came into the room and took a spot next to Nezu. Any progress, Lionel? Nezu asked, not taking his eyes off the activity below. Lionel has long, dark brown hair that he takes great care of. He keeps his hair neat, clean, and well-groomed, often combing or brushing it. His well-maintained hairstyle complements his sharp and elegant fashion sense. None, I am afraid to say, my friend, the man responded, his gaze fixed on the same thing. We have the best and brightest at Luther Corporation working on this, and we are sourcing more talent daily. Thanks to G's help, they cannot tell anyone what they are working on. She is truly remarkable. Wherever did you find her? South America, Nezu watched as a high-powered laser was brought into the room. Lionel handed him some safety goggles as the room was evacuated and all the recording devices were turned on. With bated breath, they watched as the laser was powered up and fired on the craft. The craft sprang to life, the angular patterns lighting up a brilliant blue, and the red of the laser where it was impacting the ship started to turn blue. This continued up the beam until it came in contact with the device and exploded. When the smoke cleared, the still glowing blue lines faded quickly. Well, that was interesting. It seems to have self-defense capabilities and somehow grew larger, Lionel remarked. Either there is someone in there trying to hold out, but that is highly unlikely as if they could power up, I would have assumed they would have fled once they were dug out of that mountain. Then it must be some program protecting the ship and whatever it carries. Lionel looked over at Nezu, or whatever it was carrying. Are you suggesting that the pilot of this craft is out there walking amongst us? Nezu turned to face the man. This vessel must have come here for a reason, one would assume it was some transport. With the nature of quirks, they could be passing themselves off as having some mutation quirk. Lionel brought his hand up to his chin. Reports from the time of the crash have no unknown or strange person making an appearance. All the visitors to the area are present and have been accounted for. So you're saying that this alien craft crashed into a mountain and the crew got up and walked away with no one noticing them and no reports of anything strange or weird? Nezu's eyebrow raised. That could be the case, we would have never known that anything out of the ordinary had happened if not for a random geological survey we had conducted in hopes of establishing an outdoor training camp for my school. It could also be a tomb, Lionel remarked. They didn't survive whatever forced them to crash, and it is an unknown energy source running a self-defense program. That could very well be the case, Nezu returned to the ship. Or they can be in some suspended animation waiting to wake up. The last thing I wanted is that to be the case and for first contact to be handled by a bunch of idiots in the government. Amen to that, Lionel said with a chuckle. Let's eat. I have some reports for you to review. How is your son doing? Nezu asked as they left the observation room. Alexander is doing good, tops of the class as expected, though I am slightly disappointed in his loss to your grandson for the student council. Lionel smiled, but I will soon move him to the Island location to advance his schooling before he returns. The boy wishes to go to your school. It would be an honor to have him, Nezu smiled. Has he expressed which course he will be applying to? Business, of course, Lionel said with a dismissive wave of his hand. Maybe something in the support as well, with his mind and quirk doing both, should not be an issue. No, many of those with intelligence-enhancing quirks have done so, either way, he will be a boon to the university. The symbol of peace meets the boy of tomorrow. Izuku couldn't say anything at first, standing before him was All Might, the All Might his fourth favorite hero. His favorite heroes in order, Midnight, Eraserhead, Present Mick, All Might, and Recovery Girl, would be higher, but she liked to bop him on his head with her cane a lot, and it always stung. He wasn't sure how that was possible, but she managed it every time. All Izuku could only bounce in joy as the hero just smiled and laughed. Midnight recorded the whole thing to send on the group chat. She watched him yell excitement, then shake his hands and close his eyes momentarily. All Might, it is a great pleasure to meet you, he said, his voice cracking a little as he extended his hand. It is a pleasure for me as well. I am good friends with both Recovery Girl and Nezu, so getting a chance to meet their grandson is quite the treat. The hero looked over the young boy man. He was coming into adulthood, he was a bit awkward, but All Might could see that he had good lean muscle. They asked me to come give you some pointers on your training and help you with the strength aspect of your quirk. Thank you, sir, for taking time out of your busy schedule, Izuku bowed politely. Now, what are you doing to work on controlling your strength? All Might looked around the weight room, noticing a rather impressive amount of weight on the machines before the young man. I have taken up dancing with my best friend and drawing, Izuku blushed. Mom has me sharpen the pencils fine, and I have to draw without breaking them or the tips. That is very innovative. Midnight, congratulations, All Might smiled at the heroine. I take it your problem is in combat training. I understand that you strained your teacher's shoulder. Izuku looked a little crestfallen, remembering how he had hurt his uncle Izawa. It had been nothing serious, but Izuku has refused to train with him ever since. He nodded, I need to learn how to control it so I don't hurt someone in training or even when we play sports in class. I broke a few soccer balls. So your quirk enhances your physical strength and it doesn't turn off. All Might said, his mind thinking. He smiled and asked Midnight to fetch him a grip tester. Okay, first thing we are going to do is have you squeeze this grip tester to your reach 100 to 125 kN. Now this is still in the range where you could break someone's arm, but this is where we will start. It took a little bit for him to get there and hold it. All Might sat there patiently coaching him. Once they were comfortable, he brought him to lower his target number. Midnight sat back as the number one hero sat there patiently instructing her son. It made her wish that Adam could be here to see this moment. However, she did have to admit that All Might had never looked so sexy to her. The trick is to get your body naturally to go to this level, without conscious thought. I am sure when you dance or draw that you are hyper-focused on the pressure you are applying. Izuku nodded. For those of us with that level of strength, it is necessary to learn how to do this, the same as learning how to roll with impact, to be aware that someone accidentally shoulder bumping us could lead to disastrous results for them. All Might watched and smiled at how intently Izuku was applying what he was taught. This will also help with your combat training. Your mother tells me that you quite tough, Izuku nodded. When training, this will help you not break your partner's hand should they land a solid punch. Do not let your toughness blind you to the dangers of combat, just because you think you may be able to absorb the attack you don't truly know for sure. Why risk taking the damage if you don't need to? Izuku said as if he was reciting something. My teacher tells me just because I can do it doesn't mean I should. Dodging an attack is often better than taking an attack due to unknown factors. He is very much correct. All Might figured that his teacher was probably another pro due to who the boy's mother was. Are you going to pursue heroics when you get older? Yes, sir, Izuku responded quickly. I want to graduate and join my mother's agency as a sidekick for a bit. My dream has always been to fight alongside my family and I want to help people. Be someone like yourself, sir, that when they see me, they feel everything will be alright. That is very flattering, young man, thank you. All Might patted him on the shoulder. Now follow me as we work on knowing how hard to punch an unknown opponent. Izuku was soaking in all the information he could. Thankfully, he had been trained for years to fight by his uncles and mother, so he didn't look like a fool in front of All Might. It took a while before they got into a good comfortable number. All Might was getting a little excited, though, watching the boy go. He wanted to know how much Izuku was holding back. What do you say we go to one of the training grounds for a nice spar? All Might was beaming. This way you can cut loose, and I can help you with things you should work on. Izuku looked at his mother, chewing on her bottom lip in thought, before nodding. All Might vs. Izuku. When he woke up today, he never imagined that he would be meeting All Might or receiving personal lessons from him. Never in his wildest dreams did he think that he would be standing across from him about to fight with the #1 hero in Japan. Now, Izuku was a level-headed boy in most things that did not involve Mina Ashido. That girl had a way of making his common sense go out the window. He blamed her smile, he would do anything for that smile. But here he was doing his best to loosen up while muttering up a storm about the circumstances that he found himself in. It took his mother touching his shoulder to snap him out of it. You are going to do just fine, baby, she smiled, immediately calming him down. This is possibly a once-in-a-lifetime chance for you to go all out and spar with All Might. If you land a single punch, I will buy you and Mina tickets to Alien World and give you my credit card for the whole trip. She saw his eyes light up. You can even stay till the park closes. She smirked at the determination that formed on his face. You better not break my baby. She yelled to All Might as she went to the control booth. Izuku got into his fighting stance as All Might took a boxing stance. Izuku paused, how do we know when to begin? All Might smirked and made a knocking gesture in the air, ding, ding. All Might was surprised at the boy's speed, he was damn fast. He saw the boy coming in with a right hook, All Might go to block the blow immediately. He was surprised when Izuku changed levels and instead tried to deliver a straight left to the body. All Might twisted his body slightly to avoid the punch. The blinding fast uppercut came right up the alley at Izuku. He leaned back going into a bicycle kick and felt it hit nothing but air. When he came up to face his opponent again, he was greeted with a solid punch to the chest that sent him flying back but didn't hurt much. He didn't have time to recover as All Might followed after him, putting him on the defensive. A flurry of quick jabs forced Izuku back. The wind pressure that was being generated by the punches was intense. Izuku planted his feet and deflected a left jab, missing a counter right and eating a right jab. Izuku was thrown off balance slightly. The pro hero put on a burst of speed, coming in with a punch to the boy's gut that would indeed send him skyward. Izuku realized that All Might didn't know he could fly. Izuku could dodge, but instead, he made it seem like he tried to escape, only to get caught by the blow. Izuku exhaled and tensed his stomach muscles as he was lifted off his feet into the air. All Might immediately followed him, ready to send him crashing back to earth. The boy was fast and durable, able to think on his feet. Once they were back on the ground, he would test their strength. His eyes widened as he saw the boy right himself in the air. He can fly. People believed that All Might could fly when he was jumping, or as he referred to it, falling with style. Izuku speared the #1 hero out of the air, driving him to the ground. All Might immediately went to throw the boy off, and as he did so, Izuku shifted, latching onto All Might's arm. Using his flight, he brought the pro hero with him, twisting, he threw All Might face first into the ground. All Might rolled onto his back as Izuku came down with a spectacular downward punch. The pro could block, but the force drove him into the ground. All Might crashed through the city floor and into the sewers. He saw Izuku follow him down. He slipped past All Might's left and landed a solid right hook that sent the pro hero to his knee. All Might was impressed that this kid was a force of nature. According to Nezu, his strength and speed were increasing constantly. He landed a backhand, sending Izuku tumbling back. Now that backhand hurt, Izuku, though, wasn't done. He returned to his feet, seeing All Might do the same with the trademark smile he gave Izuku, the bring it hand gesture. Izuku raced forward, water parting before him, he threw the most brutal right he could. All Might caught his punch, and when Izuku threw a left, All Might caught that one. Izuku couldn't break free. When he tried to fly up, All Might yanked him back down. What will you do now, young Kayama? What Izuku did was the pro was not prepared for laser beams shot from the boys, hitting the pro in the eyebrows. The heat instinctively forced the hero to close his eyes. Izuku kicked the pro in the side of the knee. When All Might sank to a knee, he brought his knee up under the hero's chin, snapping the pro's head back. Izuku followed it up with the strongest uppercut he could, launching All Might up and out of the sewers. Izuku tried to press his advantage, but the pro hero had recovered. Izuku missed a right as a left counter snapped his head back. He stumbled as a hard shot to his floating rib sent him down to one knee. The pain was intense. All Might had kicked it up a notch, he managed to avoid a left hook that would have knocked him out. He spun to the side and landed a sidekick to the pro. Unfortunately, All Might caught his leg and turned him overhead, sending him crashing into the ground. Izuku scrambled and tried to fly away to create distance. All Might caught his legs and yanked him back into a bear hug. Before Izuku could do anything, All Might slammed him over the head, delivering a German suplex. Izuku was rocked but not out. He hooked his legs around his opponent's shoulders, summoning all his strength. He did a backhand spring, pulling All Might up and over, sending him a crashing head fist into the ground. Izuku was in a high-mounted position. He managed to land some stinging punches to the pro's face before All Might displayed a fantastic feat of flexibility, rolled his legs up under Izuku's shoulders, and then launched him off, sending the boy crashing. Izuku got to his feet, dodged a left, slipped past a right, landed a jab, took a blow to the left side of his body, a blow to the right. The left hook rocked him, the uppercut lifted him off his feet. He felt his leg get grabbed again as he was yanked down. A straight right hand ended the fight, plunging the boy into darkness. Namuri raced out of the control booth. She was proud that her son had fought so hard and well against the #1 hero in the country. Angry that that same #1 hero had just brutalized her baby. Scared that she wasn't sure how hard Izuku had pushed All Might, but if he kept growing at the rate he had been since his powers had manifested, then just how strong was her baby going to become? All Might was walking towards the control booth with a young boy in his arms. His eyebrows had been singed off, he was bleeding, a cut above his right eye, and he was bruised. He was astounded by the level of power and the variety of power this young boy had demonstrated. All Might had not used his full strength, but he had used far more than he had expected to secure the victory. This boy was getting stronger and stronger. This power was far beyond a strength enhancement quirk, the flight, the laser vision, the toughness. It seemed like the boy had multiple quirks, and that thought worried him. He would have a long talk with Chio and Nezu later. Nezu sat back in the control booth, his hands steepled under his chin. His 12-year-old adopted grandson had just pushed the strongest hero in the country to use at least 50% of his power. That was from Nezu's calculations. He knew from the reports and testing that Izuku was getting stronger. The only takeaway was that if, for some reason, Izuku did go out of control, at least there was someone who may be able to stop him. Had he made a mistake all those years ago? What if Namuri was wrong and he wasn't the only survivor of his world? What if there were more and they were coming to Earth, not in peace but to take over? Excited was not the word for Mina Ishido's state this morning when her wonderful, super alien boyfriend had come to her and asked if she would go on a date with him. It was enough to make her smile. When he told her it was an all-day VIP trip to Alien World, that was the point. She lost it. When asked how he obtained such an experience for them, he told her about his fight with All Might and the bet with his mother. What Mina heard was that her boyfriend fought All Might for her. She quickly looked around. Her mother was in the kitchen and her father was out picking something from the store. She straddled his lap and kissed him as passionately as possible. He tried to protest briefly before surrendering. It was such a sweet surrender. She jumped back right as their mouths began to part. A voice in her mind was screaming danger. Her mother, Kara, walked in at that moment. He had super speed, but he was unsure how she looked so compassed. "Are you okay there, Izuku?" she asked with what he swore was a knowing smirk. "Yes, ma'am," he fidgeted nervously. "So would it be alright if Mina accompanied me to Alien World?" "I don't see why not, though you need to still talk to her father about the two of you dating." She set the tea down. Izuku's sweat dropped. He forgot about that being one of the reasons he was over at Mina's house that day. He wondered if he could fight All Might again. The pain of being knocked out might be preferable. Mina's father, Max, was very protective of Mina. "If you survive," Kara said with a smile as she headed back to the kitchen. Max and Izuku. They were sitting on the back porch. Max was having a bit of fun watching Izuku fidget, but truth be told, he liked the boy. Izuku was a good kid, he only got in trouble when his daughter was involved. In truth, it reminded him of his relationship with Kara. She would drag him into some situation or the other, leading to them getting in trouble. That was what made him fall in love with her. Kara, like Mina, was so vibrant and full of life. Max had no mutation quirk. He could secrete a coating from his feet and hands that allowed him to glide about. It was similar to the acid that Mina could produce, but she could make it from anywhere. Max looked at the nervous young teen and smiled. He knew Mina wanted to go into heroics. He had hoped she would change her mind, but it didn't seem likely. He knew that Izuku had a strength quirk and was very tough. He had a good head on his shoulders and a kind heart, and he seemed to be smitten with his daughter. "Listen, Izuku, I know you care about Mina, and that is all I could ask." Max placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Just do your best to protect and keep her out of trouble." He smiled when Izuku looked about to say something but stopped. "I know that it is hard, Mina is like her mother, they have a talent for trouble." Izuku smiled. And that smile. "Be patient with her." Max squatted down in front of Izuku. "I know it will be hard." You both are young, but if you are patient with her, she will make you very happy in the long run. I have no problem with you and Mina dating, I am glad her first boyfriend is a good kid like you. Izuku smiled, thank you sir, I promise I will do my best to look after her. If you break her heart, he said. I understand, sir, Izuku responded quickly. No, I was going to say I will try to hold her mother back and give you a head start, he sighed. I can't hide another body, he shook his head. Once was enough. Izuku's face has become one of shock. Well, good talk, kiddo, Max patted Izuku's head and walked back inside. Izuku would spend the next few years wondering, X-raying the area to see if there was a body hidden on the Ishido property. Alien world. The entire day was just fantastic, Mina had a blast. Not only had she wanted to come to Alien World when I opened last year, but she was here on a date. Namuri dropped them off before the park opened so they could be some of the first in line. Combined with their VIP tickets, she was just in bliss. They hit every ride, saw every show, and had a romantic dinner in deep space. They were in a darkened restaurant with a dome lit up like the cosmos, on their table swirled a mini galaxy that was projected there. Over the swirling cosmos, Izuku was mesmerized by his girlfriend sitting across from him. The slight illumination just highlighted her lovely pink skin. The sparkling light just danced in her eyes, he loved the black glare of her eyes. They drew him in. He always felt her eyes were two beautiful suns that warmed him. He wished this moment would never end as he watched her amongst the stars. Mina sat across from the boy who she dreamed about. She stared more at him than the surroundings as they rode up the Ferris wheel. He was so content and happy as he looked around. She thought it was so cute how he still showed such wonder when he could fly. The way he had looked at her over dinner and treated her today, she was the princess today, and he her prince. But the smile, he posed for pictures with her, a real-life alien walking amongst them, but he was no monster. He was so kind and gentle, he learned to dance for her to draw so he could make sure not to hurt her. Fought and trained to be a hero and trusted her with his extraordinary secret. How could she not fall for him? Izuku? She said, calling his attention. Yes Mina, she saw him blush some and swallow nervously. He watched her get up and cross the cart, she sat across his lap, their faces very close. I want you to kiss me, a real kiss. I want to know if you find me pretty, she gently wrapped her arms around his neck, she shuddered slightly as his arms went around her waist. Their eyes closed, and slowly, they came together, as their lips parted, their kiss deepened, clumsy, but they didn't know better. When he pulled her closer, she shuddered again, his strong arms held her close. Safe, loved, cared for, desired, and other emotions she didn't quite understand. The most important thing she felt was that she was the most important thing to him. The fireworks exploded all around them as they stopped at the very top. They pulled back, both breathing a little heavily, the illumination from the fireworks playing on each of their faces. Mina shifted positions and pulled out her phone to get a photo of them with the backdrop of the fireworks. When she snapped the photo, he pulled her back into another kiss. She managed to get another kiss before the phone was placed down, and she melted back into his kiss. Once the wheel began to move again, she didn't move. Instead, she rested her head on his shoulder, her eyes closed as she tried to absorb his warmth. They strolled towards the exit as the park closed, their fingers intertwined. Izuku, thank you for a magical day, Mina leaned her head on his shoulder. You're welcome Mina, I would do anything for you, he responded. Why? She responded. You always go out of your way for me, the dancing, getting us grounded. For your smile, he said so simply that the words raced straight to her heart. I would do anything for your smile, it is the best thing I get to see, when you smile, I just know that I will be okay. When all the strange things happened, you were there, talking to me, smiling for me. So when I see you smile, I am not worried about if it will be alright, and I love you. She was speechless. I know it is soon, and you don't have to say it back, but that is how I feel. Mom always tells me she loves me daily, and I tell her the same thing. Tomorrow is not guaranteed, and if I don't see you tomorrow for some reason, I want you to know that I love you. Oh Izuku, Mina whispered. It's okay, Mina, you don't have to say it, I am sorry if I put you on the spot. I swear that wasn't my intention, he squeezed her hand reassuringly. Repeat it, Izuku, she stopped walking and turned him to look at her. I love you, he said. She closed her eyes and tilted her head back. Again. I love you. Please, one more time, Mina whispered. I love you, Mina Shido, Izuku said, his voice. She opened her eyes, leaned in, and kissed him tenderly. Never stop telling me how you feel, Izuku, tell me every day, every morning, and every night, for the rest of forever. I love you, Izuku, never doubt, never wonder. No matter if this fails or soars higher than you can fly, I will always love you. Never stop growing. Izuku sat there in the room filled with his mother's gas, he stood there, not breathing. He didn't have time to hold his breath when the room flooded. He was supposed to see how long he could last before he succumbed. He knew his mother's quirk well and how it worked, he was okay if he didn't breathe it in. But eventually, he would have to breathe. That was 2 hours ago, he didn't know what to do. He stood there, he knew that they were freaking out in the control room, the monitors on him told them he hadn't drawn a single breath. Well, he couldn't stay here forever, there was something he would have to talk to them about. He might as well get it over with, he was baffled. He closed his eyes and inhaled as deeply as he could, it seemed to go on and on. Opening his eyes, he inhaled all the gas in the room. He looked around as the door opened quickly and there was his mother and his uncles. He just exhaled and all the gas flooded out. His uncle Izawa glared at him and Hitachi sighed and breathed deeply. "Hi mom." Up above the world so high. The realization that Izuku didn't have to breathe and that his lung capacity was wild, or how his grandmother put it, off the charts. They put him in a vacuum chamber, he sat there looking around. He started reviewing his homework and thinking about his next workout. He had memorized the whole workout book that All Might had handwritten for him. All Might had handwritten him a personal workout notebook. Wait, if he could withstand the without oxygen and he didn't get cold when he flew up super high. Could he survive in space? Could he go to the moon? If he could, then he could get Mina an actual moon rock. Would a moon rock be okay on Earth? He would have to research that when he got out of there. He wished they let him have his phone, but it wasn't like they expected him to be still conscious. Why was he still conscious? With all these things happening to him, his strange developments and abilities. He was an alien, and that answer, a simple explanation, was always enough for him. It was always sufficient, it was simple. But what if it didn't stop? What if he kept changing? It was a means to his dream of being a hero, standing by his mother, saving people, and being able to protect those he cared about. He walked over and hit the emergency release button, his head was pounding. He could hear his heart thumping as the doors to the other room opened and his mother came walking in. If this continued, what would be the result? Needles were not working anymore, he had fought All Might. He was an alien masquerading as a person, hiding in their world. These thoughts never bothered him before, almost everything he had been able to rationalize as being human. He looked human, he ate, drank, slept, and dreamed. Super strength is a great useful quirk. Invulnerability. It was hard to get hurt, his family wouldn't worry. Flight, that was cool, everyone wanted to fly. Heightened senses, which were helpful, were scary when they first manifested, and the combination of X-ray vision was terrifying. Super speed was just a function of his strength, it was okay. Heat vision. Not having to breathe, being able to inhale his mother's gas-freezing breath, that was fun to find out now. It seemed he could withstand the vacuum of space. What else would happen? He suddenly couldn't breathe, he couldn't think, it was all too big again, it was all too much. He saw the open door and fled, they couldn't stop him. One outside, his panic attack began to increase, he could hear the campus and all the mummers talking. Soon, in the city and beyond, the noise was overwhelming. He grabbed at his head, what if it never stopped? What if he kept changing? Why was he here? Why did his birth parents send him here? If they could fly and were super strong, why didn't they leave the Krypton? The noise, all the noise. He just fled, he went up, and away from it all. His eyes closed and he ran till the noise stopped. He opened his eyes and there he was, floating above the earth. Unknown location. Lionel Luthor sat in the control booth, poring over this vessel's latest readings that had been brought to him. It only reacted to defend itself from high-intensity energy weapons. As a highly experimental device currently being developed on Island, he was negotiating to procure it, hoping it would help him crack the vessel. He was also talking with David Shield about some protective device to see if it could withstand the attack from the ship. The readings they captured from the vessel's counterattack were higher than those of the experimental device they worked on. Lionel wondered why an uncrewed vessel had been sent from somewhere to their planet. Why send a drone that just sat there? What if it wasn't unmanned? Lionel sat back, what if it was some transport? The aliens were walking around, scouting the planet, preparing to take them over. The rise of quirks inevitably leads to humans' physical mutation. Lionel could see it all coming, they were here, hiding amongst them. How long had they been watching? Were they responsible for quirks? Have they had their interference led them to this point? Had they done this knowing that eventually, physical mutations would allow them to blend in and extended play? Sweat formed on his brow and his mind whirled. He began to shake, the world was in danger. It had been a setup, they had scouted out the planet for centuries and were planning to invade. He needed to crack that vessel. No, they needed a way to identify them. An unknown radiation had been detected from the vessel, so faint it was almost missed. If they could find a way to track it, they could find a way to find these alien invaders, maybe stop them. They needed to find a way, he had to get a hold of Nezu. The future of the planet depended on it. Mina. Mina kept frantically dialing Izuku's phone number, it kept telling her he was out of service range. She was in the backyard, frantic. The frantic phone call from Namuri asked her if she had seen Izuku and to let her know as soon as she did. She looked at the sky and started to call for him. Izuku. The cold began to seep in, the coldness of space, the silence of space, was engulfing him. He turned from the planet and looked to space. How far could he go? Where would he go? He wishes he had some answers. He began to drift from the planet, he looked over his shoulder to Earth, wondering if that was where he belonged. What would be his fate? Was he somehow a danger? You have to come home to me, Izuku. Izuku turned back towards the world. Come home, you have to come home. It was Mina's voice, he could hear her words, rich with tears. He knew she was crying, that she was crying over him. Izuku, you can't leave like this. It was his mother. You don't get to abandon me like this, you have to talk to me and be here when I go to sleep, so I know you are okay. I don't know what happened in there, talk to me. What troubles you, my son? This time, the voice was right next to him, he jerked in shock and turned, and a woman was floating. She had long curly black hair and deep blue eyes, her white suit superhero-looking clothing, red boots, cape, the blue strip on her legs, the stylized S. He had heard her description from his mother, and it was before him. A surge of emotions and confusion ran through him. I wanted to hug her and then shout at her. What would he shout? What would he scream at them? They would have come with him if they could. You're Lara Van, you're my mother. He managed. What? How? Why now? You need me. What about all the other times I needed you? Where were you when I started changing? When my X-ray vision manifested? Or super strength? Or all the other weird things? How about the fact that I am floating in space? Or that I don't need to breathe? Namuri was there, the others were there. Though you may not have seen it, I have been there watching. Like a ghost. Watching me from heaven. He replied. I am not a ghost. Nor am I the real Lara Van. I am a holographic representation of her, my memory banks have a complete scan of her neural pathways. I am as close to a living representation of your mother as possible. You're an AI designed in the likeness of my mother, Izuku replied, he almost wanted to be a ghost. That way, he would finally meet her or have proof of some afterlife. Why did you send me here? What is happening to me? Am I going to keep changing and morph into something? We sent you here, Cal, because we knew we wouldn't be with you. We wanted to give you every advantage we could, and that advantage was this planet's sun. Lara pointed to a fireball at the center of the solar system. Our people absorb solar radiation, our home planet Krypton was home to a red sun, in some terms, we were very close to humans. The gravity of Krypton was higher, the days were longer, and the temperature was more extreme, but as you know, species adapt to their home environment. Lara reached out and touched his face, it felt almost solid for a second. We sent you here to Earth because we knew that you could blend in, that your cells would absorb the solar radiation of this planet's yellow sun, giving you powers and abilities beyond even these people and their quirks. Is that the only reason why? Izuku asked. No, listen, Kal-El, listen to their cries for help. You can help them, my son, you can help more of them than any other person, Lara said as the cries for help filtered up to his ears. He heard the sounds of heroes responding in every language, but not to every call. But I am just one man. Izuku said the thought of trying to save everyone was overwhelming. It was the first lesson that his mother and uncles had beaten him. His grandmother was the worst with it, the notion of triage, which was the first thing, learning that you couldn't save everyone, no matter how strong or fast you were. You are no ordinary man, Kal-El, but I do not mean for you to try to save them by yourself. They are good people sometimes, they need someone to help show them the way. Your All Might does well, but there is more that could be done. Those left by the wayside looked down and forgotten by society. Lara touched the symbol on her chest. This is the symbol of the House of El, on our planet, it means hope. That is why I sent you here, hope. I hope you will survive and grow to become a wonderful person, find love and happiness, and use the extraordinary gifts the world has granted you to do more than blend in. To be greater than ordinary, to be super. Izuku looked at the AI, his mother's memories and knowledge were in there. Did she love me? She loved you so much, Cal, Lara looked at him with those blue eyes that were so sad. They love you, she pointed to the planet. That girl loves you. Listen to her, Cal. I love you, admit, I swear if you don't come home, I will never smile again. You hear me, Izuku. I will never smile again. Please, baby, please come back and talk to me. Please don't leave me like he did, my world was empty until you entered it. Whatever it is, we can figure it out together. I want to know where I came from, I want to know more. Izuku said to Lara. Where is the craft that brought me? It has been taken, they are attempting to access it to see what they can learn from it, Lara replied. I will now extract it from that location and move it somewhere safe, somewhere you can come and learn. Don't take away that girl's smile, and don't leave your mother alone. But what about me? What is going to keep happening to me? Izuku said he was already floating back toward Earth. You will continue to get stronger, Cal, as long as the sun burns, you will get stronger. Lara smiled at him, but you will not suddenly sprout a second head or 8 limbs or eat your family, you will continue to learn to control your abilities, and I will help you do so. You will not be a danger to them, they will be safe. Thank you, he whispered. How will I know where to find you? What do I call you? My official designation is Brain Interactive Construct to Kryptonians, or Brainiac for short. I will send you a message, the technology is rather primitive, Lara smiled. A Superman wouldn't let that girl continue to cry. Izuku nodded his head, turned, and flew back to Earth. Unknown location. The sensors began to run rampant, alarms began to sound as the craft powered up. The chromium-titanium alloy cables began to snap as the craft shrugged them off like a spiderweb from a tree. Lionel watched in disbelief as everything they had to hold in place began to fail. The sensors had begun to register unprecedented activity within the vessel, and as the scientists rushed to gather readings, the whole base was put on high alert. It was an unparalleled activity, they then detected a very faint signal from the craft. They yelled to know where and what it was transmitting. All they could tell him was that it was sending the signal out of the atmosphere. This was it, Lionel screamed internally. They were calling for the others, the invasion would be imminent. Then everything stopped. The signal for the energy readings was entirely still. Then, the whole craft came alive and moved. They shut the room down, hoping to contain it. From the monitors, they saw strange language appear on the screen, and all the doors opened. The vessel was there, then it was gone, it had escaped, and their radar and sensors lost it immediately, it was there, then just gone. Once it was out of the base, one of the cameras just disappeared from the video. Lionel slumped back into his chair amongst the chaos, the Earth was about to be invaded. It was his duty to protect the planet. He would repel this invasion and show them that the Earth was not theirs for the taking. He walked blindly to his office and picked up the phone. The chipper voice of Nezu sounded on the other end. Nezu, the craft has escaped, before it did, it sent a message out of the atmosphere. I believe there is an alien invasion imminent. Lionel said into the receiver. We must get ready to fight for our lives and the whole planet. Mina. She stood there staring at the night sky, tears running down her face. A sudden gust of wind made her shut them, and the voice that spoke washed over her. I am sorry I made you cry. Please don't take that smile away. She turned and saw Izuku standing there, she rushed to him, wrapping him in a tight embrace. She pulled away and hit his chest as hard as she could a few times, then hugged him again. I was so scared, you big dummy. She cried into his shoulder. How could you just disappear like that? Why would you go away? You know I would go with you. Namuri. Her phone rang. She saw the caller ID read Kara, she frantically answered the call. Hello. He just landed in the backyard with Mina. Kara said quickly. Make sure he stays there. I am on my way. She said, dashing out of the house. Mina and Izuku. I freaked out, he said quietly. It was more like a panic attack, I think. Talk to me, Izuku, Mina said. I should call my mom. She was freaking out, he said, freeing his arm and placing the call. You stay right where you are, Izuku. I am on my way. I swear if you leave Mina's, I will ground you for the rest of your life. Mina, you hold him down, do whatever you have to do. The call ended. Mina just held him tight, she would have even if Namuri hadn't told her to. She wanted to demand more information, but knew Namuri would ask for the same, so she waited. Are you home? She whispered. You didn't come here to tell me goodbye, did you? Her voice trembled with emotion, her heart ached at the thought. I am not going anywhere, Mina, he said, holding her tight enough. This isn't goodbye, you can't get rid of me. I wouldn't want to rob the world of that smile. You dummy. She responded. They just stood there till they heard a car coming to a screeching halt in the driveway. They didn't dare move as they listened to the door open, and Kara said they were in the backyard. The door flew open, Mina stepped back as Namuri barreled into her son. Don't you ever do that again. Do you hear me, Izuku? You cannot scare me like that. Namuri held on to him as all her emotions flooded out, she sobbed into his shoulder. Izuku felt terrible, he had made his two most influential people cry. The woman who had taken in an alien baby had no idea of what would happen or how it would turn out. She had been his first hero, she stepped up and did what many people wouldn't have done. She kept him a secret, didn't just turn him over. Instead, she brought him into her heart. Mina was his best friend, his girlfriend, the girl he was in love with. She never questioned his abilities, she just always accepted him for him. When she found out he was alien, it just made him fantastic. She was the one to tell him that she wanted to be together. When he told her he loved her, she didn't shrink from it, she embraced it and loved him back. I am so sorry, Mom, he reached out and pulled Mina back into the hug. I am so sorry I made you two cry and scared you like that. I promise that I will never do something like that again. That I will talk to you and tell you what is bothering me. Then why did you run off like that? Namuri demanded. When standing in that vacuum chamber, I realized I didn't need to breathe. It was just another strange thing, the freezing breath, the heat vision, all of it. I started to freak out, wondering what else would happen and what other things would manifest. What if I became a danger to you two or the world? Izuku managed to say, though he choked up a few times. I started to panic, then the world got loud, and I just ran, flew. Izuku, no matter what happens, I am your mother, and I will always be by your side, Nomuri said softly, rubbing his back. No matter what. No matter the strange ability, no matter what. I love you. We are going to be heroes together. Mina added. You and I are going to help to save so many people. I need you to keep me from getting in too much trouble. I am sorry, he said. What happened? Nomuri said. I talked to Lara, he said, the girls pulled back. The hologram AI, whatever you want to call it. It told me that I could do what I do because of Earth's yellow sun, that Kryptonian bodies absorb solar radiation. Krypton had a red sun, so they didn't have powers like me. They sent me here because they knew I would absorb the energy and be strong to survive here. She wanted what was best for me, she wanted me to thrive and help people. To not just be an ordinary man but a Superman. Izuku looked to the sky. She said the ship that brought me has been being kept in a facility, that people were trying to hack into it, but she was going to move it somewhere so I could come and learn about my people. She said she would be able to help me train. No offense, but where was it all the other times? Mina said, somewhat angry. Nomuri nodded, some sort of heads up, like what to expect, would have been nice. It said that you and the others were there and it was watching just in case, but this time, it was the only one that could help me, Izuku said. Is Izuku an actual alien? The trio turned around and saw Kara standing there, they all winced. What if he was? Nomuri asked hesitantly, ready to gas everyone if need be. Makes sense with all his crazy powers, and of course, my daughter would find and fall in love with an actual alien, Kara shrugged. I won't say anything, I like the kid. But you may want to bring your conversation inside the house. She laughed when the trio looked rather sheepish as they walked inside. Nezu. He sat back after the brief conversation with Lionel, the man was entering full alien invasion mode. He was relieved when he received the notification from Nomuri that Izuku had been found, unharmed, and was safe. He looked over the data file on his grandson, with all the capabilities he possessed, he was dangerous. Dangerous if he went rogue or down the path of villainy. He knew he couldn't let that happen, as Awa and his Ashi had already accepted teaching positions. He just now had to rope in Nomuri, she was already interested. He just had to sweeten the pot. Then there was Izuku, or rather, there was his people. Were there any more of them out there? Was the ship signaling an invasion or a rescue of some sort? If the Kryptonian race could space travel to send a child to this world, they had some outposts out in the galaxy. Maybe some group that split off from the rest. He was torn, had he made a mistake in keeping Izuku a secret from the rest of the world? He sat back, he believed in the person his grandson was becoming and he would prepare for the worst. He just hoped he wasn't wrong either way. That's it for today guys, hope you enjoyed this, if you did then please make sure to leave a like, share and do check it out author of this fanfic. Take care. Thanks for watching.